Hey, I'm Dean and this is Legacy Voyage. In Season 1, I'm documenting my journey to earning my first 100K net worth as a full-time college student. Join me as I share some of the lessons I learned along the way.
As a kid, I was pretty bad. Like, I had never listened to my parents, especially my mom. I would literally, when I used to live in Tongan, I would go and steal money from my parents' wallets, even from my neighbors' wallets, and just go spend it and get toys and candy and stuff. And as the usual Tongan upbringing is, my mom would always like, beat me up. But it was interesting because I think it was also very common is that after she beat me up, she'd always be like, Dean, you know I love you, right? And I'd be like, yes, mom, I know you love me. And I'd be like, she'd be hugging me, I'd be hugging her back, tears down my face because she just beat me up. And then here I am still hugging her because she's hugging me back. Yeah. That was kind of like the typical Tongan upbringing. And recently I've been really thinking about this idea of like knowing something, which is pretty philosophical, but this story will hopefully illustrate that idea. Because as a kid, I always kind of accepted that, like, oh yeah, my mom loves me. But it's something different than truly understanding and truly knowing that fact that yes, my mom loves me. And there was this pretty pivotal moment. I think there were a couple moments when I was a kid where I truly realized it. One of them being seeing how hard my mom was working, single mother, 5 kids, and how much effort she put into working just to put a roof over our heads. But there was another time in particular, I think I was like probably 6th grade, I think. Either late elementary, early middle school, like around that age group. And during this time, I found out I was born with an extra tooth. So he had to do this whole operation to take that extra tooth out. And while they were gonna do that, they're like, oh yeah, might as well take out your wisdom teeth too. So fun fact, I was born with an extra tooth. And it wasn't like an extra tooth already showing, it was more like a tooth that was embedded in my gums. And so they'd have to like cut into my gums and then take out the tooth and then do this whole extra thing. But while they're doing that, they're gonna also take out my wisdom teeth. So it was like a win-win scenario, boom, perfect. Fast forward to the operation, I'm over here super nervous, like, oh my goodness, this is crazy, I don't know how it's gonna be. But especially I was nervous because I saw those videos on YouTube about the people who were like drugged out of their minds. And when they wake up from taking their wisdom teeth out, they would just be like spouting nonsense. And I was so nervous that I would wake up and just be spouting this like nonsense. I didn't want my mom to be like, dude, what the heck is this kid been up to? So day of the operation comes, pull up to the hospital, and it's pretty chill. Like they plug me into the thing, they give me the little shot that's supposed to knock me out or put me under. And as they do that, I'm like, oh, this thing is not gonna put me under. And I intentionally tried to stay up just to like test it to see if I was built different. Turns out I was not built different at all. I got knocked out in like a second. And the next thing I remember is getting woken up by the doctors be like, hey, it's time to wake up. And I'm not sure if it was like the stuff that they gave me specifically, but I did not fully go out of my mind. Like I was present in the moment. So that was a relief to know that I wasn't completely out of it. But my mom was recording me and she asked me a question. And then I tried talking, but I was like, what the heck? My mouth is full of something. And then I realized I can't feel my mouth. And then I realized again, my mouth is like, there's a whole bunch of blood in there. So they cut my mouth open like all these different ways because they had to take out the wisdom teeth and stuff. And so what I didn't realize as I was being rolled out of that hospital, I started like getting up and walking and everything. What I didn't realize is how long and how excruciating that recovery would be. Because I was over here thinking, oh yeah, they'll put me under, I'll be fine, I'll be back in like a couple days, no biggie. For the next 2 weeks, I kid you not, I couldn't even walk. And it was the weirdest thing in the world. But it was because whenever I took a step, like it would vibrate. I could feel the vibrations come up to my teeth and it would start hurting. And so whenever I did walk, I had to walk like super carefully. Or at least I couldn't be speed walking or anything. And on top of that, I could just want to stay in bed all day because of how much it hurt. And then also on top of that, I couldn't even eat because my mouth was all messed up. So the only thing I could eat was yogurt. Specifically parfaits from McDonald's because that was my jam. Oh, and mac and cheese too. I think that was legit my diet for those 2 weeks. But through this whole experience, what I noticed was how much my mom came through. Like how much she was just always there. Here, Dean. Here's the parfait that you asked for. Here's the mac and cheese that you asked for. And I think that was another one of those pivotal moments to like understand how much my mom is willing to do for me, how much she's willing to go through, how many walls she's willing to run through. Because it's one thing to understand and accept the proposition that yes, my mom loves me. This person has love and that love is toward me. But it's something completely different, I think, to truly know what it means that my mom loves me. And this is exactly what I'm talking about, is that she is willing to go through all of this for me. Jump through all these hoops just so I can get this parfait that I can only eat, or this mac and cheese. And the moral of this story, the big lesson, the big takeaway, is something I've been thinking about when it comes to thick versus thin knowledge. And originally I called this explicit versus implicit knowledge. And I was talking about this idea in my philosophy class, and my professor, she was like, I'm not sure that's the right term for it. So I decided I'm gonna try a different name. So maybe I'll call it something different in the future, but that's the name I decided on for now, is thin versus thick. And it's basically like this, like thin knowledge is accepting the truth of a proposition. It's just simply accepting the truth of it. Where thick knowledge is truly understanding and truly knowing what that means. Now moving on to doubles of the week. These are 2 dubs and 2 L's I took over the week. First big dub is I ran 60 miles instead of going to Dillo Day. For some context, Dillo Day is like the big, it's basically Northwestern's Coachella. You know, Coachella is like the big music festival that everyone's super hyped to go to and everyone gets wasted at. That's basically what Dillo Day is, but for Northwestern. Bunch of NU kids get super, super drunk and they go crazy. And I've gone to those things for the past 2 years, the Dillo Day thing. But this year I was like so zoned out. I didn't even get my ticket. And on the day of, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just go for a run. So I ended up running 60 miles, which was a dub in 2 ways. First of all, I ran 60 miles. Second of all, I didn't go to Dillo Day. Like, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Let's go. But the second dub is tons of progress, tons of work on the Leland side of things. So lately, my schedule has just been packed. Absolutely packed with calls with college clubs, trying to convince them to take Leland money and be like, hey, well, really, it's more so just trying to promote the Leland word, get people to buy from us. Moving on to the 2 L's. First L is that I've definitely been lacking protein, for sure. Like, my nutrition game has not been the best. And one of the big reasons for that is because I don't really want to pay for groceries. Our scholarship house has this deal with one of the catering companies that they'll bring in food every weekday. So I've just been kind of dependent on that. The only bad thing is that sometimes they don't bring in protein. And when they don't bring in protein, then your boy is cooked. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I can't wait to go to Utah. Because over there, I'll buy my own food, and I can cook my own food, I can eat my own food. So my nutrition finna be on point when I go out there. But yeah, nutrition hasn't been the absolute best. And then the second L is that I'm finding it kind of hard to find books that I genuinely, really want to read. I feel like most of the books I've been reading recently are mostly just book recs on like biographies and stuff, which, don't get me wrong, I like biographies. I think biographies are cool. But none of the books has had like that appeal where it's going to be like, I definitely want to read this book. I just kind of put it in the background as I run. So we'll see if I'm able to find any books that I genuinely enjoy. If I don't, then I don't. I don't think it's that deep. Moving on to the philosophizing section, these are just some things that I've been thinking about. The first thing is 3 qualities that I heard from someone about how to be a good dad. Now, ironically, I didn't hear this from a dad, which I think is probably good. I heard it from mom, but I think it still stands. Here are the 3 qualities. First, to be a good dad, we must love the wife. I definitely agree with this because I've seen firsthand that putting the wife first, everything else seems to fall in order. Happy wife, happy life, as the saying goes. Second thing, show the kids how much I love my wife. For some reason, I just think this is also true. It's like show versus tell. Showing seems to be more powerful. And then the third part is to play with the kids. And this one, I think it take a lot of different forms. Like, as the kids are little, of course, like physically play around with them, play tag or whatever. But as they grow older, it's like something I heard, I think from a Sean Purry podcast. But he's basically saying that most people, the way they parent is they have these lists of things that they're personally interested in, and they try to get the kids to be interested in it. But what Sean has seen and what he's trying to do himself is figure out what the kids are interested in, and then just become super interested in that thing. And I think this third point kind of gets at that, is like, okay, if my kid is going to be super into like theater, for example, then do re mi, bro. Like, I'm in there. Or if they're going to be super into volleyball, then I'm going to have the meanest spike you ever seen. Well, I think this point is very true. But this is all to say, like, although I'm probably, let's say, 10 years out from being a dad, and I probably don't have to, or actually, I definitely don't have to be thinking about fatherhood, probably. This is just a really important point, I think, that I hope to remember, especially as I become a dad. But I think it would be super interesting to see what happens when I actually do become a dad, and like listen back to my 20-year-old self philosophizing about what it might be like to be a dad. I don't know. I think that's probably some of the cool things that come along with recording the journey and doing these podcasts. Bro, imagine if my kids listen to this. They'd be like, what the heck? My dad definitely didn't play with me. No, just... Anyways, moving on to the next thing. I kind of already talked about it, but like I said in the story, and the big takeaway was this idea of thin versus thick concepts. And originally, I applied this idea to Christianity, because Christianity is not merely accepting some propositional facts like, yes, Jesus did rise from the dead for my sins, which I think is how some people might look at it. Is like, I think it's how I looked at it for a long time, is these are the facts, and as long as I accept them, then boom, I'm good, off to the races. But what I have learned, and what I kind of knew already, but I didn't fully understand, is that it truly is this relational type of truth, or this relational type of knowledge, that is more of this thick knowledge, that it's completely different to kind of know that my mom loves me, or kind of know that God loves me. That's very different than truly understanding and feeling the weight and what it means that my mom loves me, or that God loves me. And in my view, I think this kind of gets at that. Moving on to the weekly roundup. These are random finds I had throughout the week. Could be a question, a book, quote, anything that stuck with me. The first thing was this quote by Blaise Pascal. He always seems to come up, man. This Pascal guy. But here's a quote. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Yeah, I just think there's so much truth to this. Like, I think boredom is a very powerful tool. I think, oh, bro, this crazy thing happened when I was on a road trip. I think I'm going to share this already, but I was on a road trip with my mom and cousins and my sister. We were on this road trip, and my little cousin, who's from the islands, she didn't have any type of device. And the entire trip, she was just like staring off into the window. And I didn't realize this, but after the trip, I was like, hey, what did you have? Like, did you not have a phone or anything? And she's like, no. She literally just sat there. She raw dogged the road trip. I was so, first of all, impressed. Second of all, like, she's a psychopath. But mostly impressed. Like, that is so cool to me, that she can just sit there and sit with the boredom. Like, that truly is a skill and a superpower. And I think I've definitely seen this where I'm probably at my weakest when I can't sit with boredom, which I think is kind of a bar, low key, because there's a ton of strength I find in being able to sit with the boredom. Anyways, the next thing I found was this question. It's kind of a long question, but I think it's still powerful. Here's the question. How have I been complicit in creating the conditions I say I don't want? Now, I heard this from a podcast, so I'll try to explain it in the way that he explained the question. But there's kind of two parts of this question. The first part is this word complicit, which is important because it's not necessarily responsible, but complicit is more so an accomplice. Like, think of an accomplice. It's not that I am explicitly the reason why this bad thing is happening, but more so I'm like a bystander in letting this thing happen. And the second part of this question is like basically calling out hypocrites. It's like I say I want one thing, but actually another thing is happening. My actions are showing a different thing. So another way of phrasing this question could be something like, how am I letting things happen that I don't want to happen? Which could be, how am I letting myself get fat? Or how am I letting myself fail school? Stuff like that. Moving on to the podcast that I found. Here's an interesting one. There's this Christian scholar who got into some controversy, I think, not so long ago. Or like, at least he blew up pretty big. His name is Huff, Christian scholar. And he's been doing the rounds on all the big podcasts, went on the Joe Rogans. And he went on recently to the Flagrant podcast with honestly some of my favorite comedians. Andrew Schultz and, oh man, that's tough. I forgot the other guys. Akan? Indian dude, I think. But they're both super funny. And they had this Christian scholar come on and he was just like dropping bombs of knowledge. So that was pretty interesting. And the book for this episode that I found was a biography of the Wright brothers. Now, I was listening to this on one of my runs, but I think I kind of get that similar idea. But these are the Wright brothers, the fools who made flying, who discovered how to fly, basically. And I think my biggest takeaway from this was seeing how possible it is for people to literally just do things. Like these two brothers who had no credentials, super under-resourced. All they really had was like this idea and a dream and conviction to actually do it. And they went and they actually did it. But one of the crazier parts about this story, I think, is the fact that there was a whole bunch of other people who were way more credentialed, had way more money, and they didn't do it. They weren't able to do it. So this kind of gets to the same thing as like, yes, it's one thing to know that I'm able to do things, so just go out and do things with an idea and a dream. It's another thing to see stories like this and truly understand what that means and what that entails. Like, yes, I, myself, Dean Wata, am able to go out and like create a podcast or go out and build a crazy, huge business.
Okay, it took a little break because I had to end it since the last clip, but the final thing for the weekly roundup that I found was this random video from when I was in like 5th grade. Bro, at this point I had to be probably like 10 years old. Yeah, I think like 10, 11. And it was this last minute project I did to like do the Rubik's Cube because I was a Rubik's Cube kid. So this was just a little video I found for that. But moving on to the final section is my life update. It's the update on 4 most important things in my life: my God, myself, my people, and my work, in that order. First, my God. I think I really want to get more consistent with reading the Bible every night. Especially, and I'll talk about this more in the update later, but I gotta learn Tongan for sure for next week because I have the big Tongan test. But also, when I read the Bible every night, it helps me sleep, which is super, super helpful. So it's like a win-win-win type of scenario because like not only am I reading the Bible, but I'm also reading Tongan, and I can also work on my sleep. So it's kind of like sets that as a super, super high priority from now on, which I'm now realizing because last night was one of the first nights where I didn't read the Bible, and oh man, I slept terribly. So I think that will be like a pivotal part of my night routine from now on. So that'll be good to keep in mind. And then update on myself. I think everything is going well. The 60-mile run was a dub. I tried running yesterday, but I think my sleep was just cooked. So I'm now realizing how important sleep is for running. And if I want to run this marathon, then I'm definitely going to have phenomenal sleep. So gonna have to get that back on track. But now that I'm not running as much, I think I can hit the gym more. So maybe we'll see. We'll see. Update on my people. Things are going well. It's pretty chill. For the past couple days, definitely. I've not worked too much, or at least I haven't poured as much time as I usually do into my work. So I've been using that more towards spending time with my people. So that was pretty nice. And then finally, update on my work. The first big thing is, like I mentioned, the Tongan test. It literally took me probably almost 2 years, because it's about a year and a half when I started reaching out to people. But in Northwestern, or at least at my school at Northwestern, to get my degree, I need to know a language, or at least I need 2 years of studying a college language. But one of the cool things they have at Northwestern is that if they don't teach the language, then I can go learn it on my own and take a placement test. And they will go find a placement test for me. So this time I learned Tongan, but I've been spending the past year and a half trying to look for a test, trying to look for a professor to give me a test. And they keep saying, oh, yeah, we'll get around to it. Finally, I have the test. So scheduled to take that on Wednesday, which is why I really gotta put more effort into this learning Tongan thing. I honestly don't think it'll be too hard. From what I read, most of the test is multiple choice. So I think it'll just be like me trying to understand certain words, which I don't think I need to know every single word. I just need to be able to comprehend the context and answer questions on it. So hopefully it shouldn't be too difficult. But of course, it's better to be over-prepared on that one. Because I think if I don't pass it, then I'm royally cooked. Like, super cooked. So that'll be cool. And then also, I started a new blog, or at least it's not a new blog, but I rebranded the blog that I was using. Because I thought it was kind of confusing that I had, like, Legacy Voyage, the podcast, and also Legacy Voyage, the blog. So now I'm calling it Gao Gao, which means shower in Tongan. But it's basically my shower thoughts in writing, is the whole premise of that name. But Gao Gao is my blog, and Legacy Voyage will be the podcast. Then besides that, yeah, I think Lillian has been a dub. I think I've been slower on my work over there because I run into a couple issues, but also haven't had as much time as usual dedicated towards Leland stuff. And then the other thing is that I had this cool hackathon project idea. So they're doing a hackathon tomorrow into Saturday for Leland. And hackathon is basically like cook up whatever you can cook up. So you pick a project and then you cook up within like 36 hours and see what you can build. So my idea is to build this thing called Lex, which is a Leland expert, basically an AI career buddy. Think of like Duo, but instead of language, it's for career growth. So that's kind of the premise of this whole thing. And I've been doing some brainstorming around it. I think I'll try to get a head start on that stuff, but that's been going well. But yeah, I'll catch y'all in the next one. I record these episodes completely free to share success with everyone. So the only thing I ask is that if you learned anything or found something interesting in this episode, just leave a review and share it with a friend. Only takes 5 seconds and it would mean the world. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next episode. Tatok, see you.